Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy2, your service team's personal coach, giving them the process, resources, and insights to deliver the perfect customer experience over the phone. Learn more at happitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Thank you, everyone, for joining another episode of Next in Queue. I am honored today to be joined by Kate Kompelien. Kate is the Executive Director of Experience Strategy at T-Tech Digital. Welcome to the show, Kate. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, Rob.
Now, most of the time when I talk to people who are in customer experience, they have had a interesting road to get there, and they often don't start there. I find your journey into customer experience to be very unique because the first few years of your career had really not a lot to do with customer experience. So let's start first by talking about your college experience, because I think that makes a little bit of sense when we talk into where your career started. So you started at the University of Minnesota, and you got a degree in what?
I got a degree in food science.
Food science. Okay, so then you went to, and it's not a nemesis, even though I'm a rock chalk Jayhawk. But then you got your master's at K-State, Kansas State University, in grain science.
Yes.
And then you went to Pillsbury, and you did what?
I was a food scientist in the food service division. And really, during that experience, I got to be back of house with food service operators, and they were struggling with high turnover, low educated workforce. And so I was back there as a food scientist trying to understand how I could simplify their recipes and simplify their processes back of house. And that was really what interested me in learning more about pain points, needs, how to solve problems. So that may give you a little bit of a glimpse on where I went next.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So continue telling us about that journey. So what was next? Where did you go from the food science side? Because you stayed in the food industry for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I did, and it took me 7 years to get my master's in marketing, MBA in marketing from the University of St. Thomas. So I was working full time. I was going to school at night. I was having babies, so raising kids. It was a time in my life where I had zero social life, but I really felt like food science was not my thing. Like, I love to bake. I still love to bake. People call me Baker Kate, right? I have this love for food. So don't get me wrong, but going into the plant in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. to run a plant trial, it is true. I did turn a batch of dough Hunter Orange, which got my calculations mixed up.
Wait. we got to pause there. First of all, can you describe Hunter Orange for me? Is this the brightly vest?
Yes.
Vest orange?
That is correct. And it was thousands of pounds of dough. Not in your KitchenAid at home, but in a giant, not in a pilot plant, but in the actual plant. When I was testing one of my recipes, I got my decimal place in the wrong place for that food color. Yep.
Oh, it's always a decimal place error. Just simple rounding. That's
simple
where it
rounding
goes wrong.
That's
okay,
right.
Well, were these like supposed to be biscuits or something? Because I think there needs to be more bright fluorescent orange food in the world. And I think maybe you were onto something, actually.
It could be I was making Danish dough.
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Danish dough. So lots of layering of fat and dough, fat and dough. Yes, the steam hits the dough, poof, get you rising, you get the crispy crunchiness and the soft chewy center. Yeah, I could talk food science still after all these years, but my passion really was around that customer. And so at Pillsbury and General Mills, it's really, the team is led by a marketer, and the marketing team always told me what to do for that customer. And I always thought to myself, or the consumer, as they called it, I always thought to myself, well, why are they having me do this? How do we know that the customer wants this? And so that really opened up my mind to like wanting to learn more about the customer. And I didn't start off with customer experience, right? I went into market research. So after that 7 years of fun studying at night when my kids are sleeping, I got my MBA in marketing. And it was sort of a crossroad for me at that time. Do I go into marketing, which had I probably would have had a very different journey, or do I go into marketing research? Well, at the time, the Pillsbury company and General Mills was like, well, how can you be a market researcher? You're a food scientist. And I said, they're both science, right? And of course I can be a market researcher. Just because I'm a food scientist doesn't mean I can't do that. So it took a little bit of convincing to HR to let me interview for this market research job, because at the time that was the job that was open and available to apply for. So I applied for that job. I got it. I was fortunate enough to go back for a while to food service. I loved food service, lodging, business and industry, restaurants, hotels, military, college and university, and just being able to spend time again with those food service operators. After that, I went into in context experimentation. It was a new group that I formed, which was a little bit uncomfortable because I hadn't been in market research for too long, but think lemonade stand. So going into that store, pretending I was a shopper, shopping, the stores and putting product in my cart, the whole time observing shopper behavior around a particular product we had on shelf. And when that consumer grabbed that product or spent time studying it, we would intercept them with a gift card, ask them some questions around, that product, the package, what caught their eye, all sorts of things. We found it cut about 4 to 6 months off of development time doing that.
Wow.
So that was pretty fun. Went into advertising research, spent a lot of time on total and checks. Checks turning gluten-free was the first, advertisement that I worked on, which was fun, coming up with the insights around that. And the insight that we came up with based on the market research we were doing is I just want to be normal. And so that was pretty exciting. That business grew dramatically. Did some head-to-head advertising against Total and Kashi. So because Kashi at the time claimed to be this healthy brand. And during one of my focus groups, I uncovered that Kashi consumers thought that it had all this vitamins and minerals. So I ran over to the grocery store, I got a box, I put them side by side, and I said, talk to me about the vitamins and minerals. And they were horrified. And I said, we have something here. So that was really fun. So I won't keep going into my career, but that's sort of how I got into market research.
That's really interesting. You bring up something that I think is challenging for a lot of people when they want to pivot in their career, and that is trying to convince someone that I can do something else, because I think a lot of people get pigeonholed if they do something for a long time. Here you are, a food scientist for the better part of a decade, and now you're trying to make this transition into something that someone else looks at what you've been doing and they don't see the connections. How hard was it to convince them that you could make that transition?
Well, good thing it took me 7 years to finish my degree. And not really that, but I was sort of persistent. And I tell young people that are entering in your career, follow your passions. Follow the things that you're good at, follow the things that you get excited about, things that make you want to come to work and do more of. Now, I have lost quite a few employees by saying that, but it's true. You gotta do what you love and what you enjoy. And I was just persistent.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did a lot of different things with General Mills and with Pillsbury, and then you made yet another shift. This time, really the shift was within the industry that you were working in. So tell us about um, going to Best Buy.
Yes. So Best Buy, so due to my passion within that in context experimentation, that lemonade stand, Best Buy was looking for somebody that could help them with research when they were redesigning their stores. They were also bringing in two product lines that nobody had really heard of. So back in 2011, health technology, which we called health and wellness at first at Best Buy, and consumers were like, what? You do not have permission to play there. And then home energy products, which at the time in 2011, people were like, what is that? And how do I use it? And why would you buy it? So really helping understand that behavior of shopping for a product, you really don't know what it is. And how do you educate it, how consumers around that? How do you display the product so they know functionally how it works? And then doing that research around what do we have permission for in the health space? And that was health technology. And so I was only in that space for about a year when Best Buy sort of went off of the end of a slide down a slippery slope really fast and was told I was going to be a panel manager. And I thought, panel manager, like, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, well, okay. And a couple of weeks later, my boss said, oh, wait, no, you thought you were doing that? And I said, well, yeah, that's what you told me. And they said, oh, no, that was just to save your job. We have to find something for you. And so fortunately enough, at that time, they Ara Slapis, who was a chief design officer, she wanted somebody to be a customer experience senior manager for her. And so they said, Kate, you want to do that? I said, yes, I want to do that. And that is what transitioned now into the part of my career I'm in now.
Yeah. So I'm interested, how much of that, I don't know what you want to call it, your undercover work in the grocery stores uh, was put to use in Best Buy? Because I imagine you did some very similar type of work in Best Buy and kind of observing how people interact with the store and the displays and the products there.
Yeah, so I did a lot of observational research, a lot of intercepts, some shop alongs. And so the shop alongs were really within those new categories, like, tell me what you think. Let's bring you over here. What are these products? How would you use it? How is it helping you learn and understand? Right? When it was store redesigns, what are the paths and the patterns that shoppers are taking into the store? Where are they going first? Starting to even at that time uncover the pain points of people are really mad that you're putting store pickup in the back of the store when the reason they do pickup is so they can pick it up and leave.
Right.
Whereas at the time, retailers were thinking, well, if I put it in the back of the store, they have to go all the way back through the store, so they might buy something. But realizing that the customer experience is so much more important for the longevity of the relationship with your brand than, forcing them and delaying them into kind of where they want to get to next. And so did a lot of that, and everything from, man, when the shelves are really high in a retail store, they can't see the blue shirts. And the blue shirts are a very important value prop to Best Buy because people go into the store because they have that one or two remaining questions left. And if they can't see those valuable assets, they often get frustrated and leave. So lowering the shelves so they can see across the store at any one time, at any department, was a really smart move. And so, yeah, we did a lot of the intercepts. So watching for behavior that we wanted to learn more about, and then intercepting them as they left the store, offering them some gift cards. And it was all very in the moment because these stores had to be done very quickly, and they had the board and these executives coming through and walking through. So I had to quickly find out what all the pain points were in that shopping experience, produce that information back to the head of the store so they could quickly solve things, sometimes just with signage and ropes and different things like that, just to solve some of the issues really quickly. but it was very much in the moment.
When I listen to you talk about the details that you pick up and identify, and I think about your previous career as a scientist, which is a very precise, right, especially food science, right? It's
Yeah.
everything is very precise, and this is why that
very precise
decimal point ends up making a huge impact on color. One of the people that you worked with at Best Buy, I'm going to use a quote they used to describe you. They said you were customer obsession incarnate. And
wow.
I hear this, like all of the things that you're picking up on in observing customers and their behaviors and asking questions. And I'm wondering, as you started looking at digital channels and different channels other than those retail channels that you were working with originally, how that changed how you went about gathering this data.
Yeah, so I think of it as role of channel. And early in my Best Buy career, well, actually, when I first started getting into that customer experience piece, I started thinking about, it's interesting that basically at the time, Best Buy took their website and shoved it into mobile and then shoved it into an app, right? And I thought, well, people use an app very differently. They use a PC and very differently than when they go into the store. There's very different reasons for shopping within those channels. And so I did a big study around role of channel. And in my opinion, it's like, let's address the moments that matter in those channels and be the best we can possibly be, have the best experience for the app. And who cares if 100 things are left off of it? Because if 80% of what they're using it across to do these 5 things, let's make that experience great. And so really spent time on making sure that we weren't one size fits all. And we really prepared the sales associates too to say, hey, when people come into the store across these categories are most important to touch and feel. So best have some awesome displays. These categories have these types of questions. Best prepare your sales associate to answer those. And really knowing that consumers were changing. They were coming into stores being very educated versus in the past, they had 100 questions. So those store employees at the time kind of felt like useless. Like, well, what is my role if they already know everything? And really the role was to understand, well, how are they using this product? How do they plan to use it? What are they going to do with it? So for an example, a television. Are they doing it for family movie night? Are they doing it because they love entertaining for sporting events? Like, what is their primary usage? And that would help guide then the conversation. And so, and wondering and figuring out what are those common questions around the categories that they're likely to have. And so, and also understanding that some of the nuances, like when I come into the store, please don't drag me halfway across the store and then back and then over here and then over there to go to all these random computers, right? So figuring out like, how can they have that digital device in their hand so they can answering those questions real time, ringing up an order real time, right? What are those pain points that you need to remove from that experience?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm wondering, was there like any aha moment that you had with the app that was just like, hey, either get rid of this or we absolutely have to fix this one thing, like it's critical. This was like a game changer.
Yeah, well, generally people in retail use apps to store hours, store location. If I have something in my cart, let me buy it quickly, right? And then let me track my order. I mean, there's really a handful of things that consumers are primarily using their app for. I'm sorry, but most consumers, especially my age, are not going to shop on a phone because it's hard to read the descriptions behind anything.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
hard to compare on this tiny screen. And so really knowing, going back to role of channel, really knowing what that role is and making it the best experience it can be.
Yeah, I'm feeling that comment a lot because now I'm constantly taking off my glasses to look at
Huh.
my phone, which tells me something about my age and my eyesight that I really don't want to hear, but it happens a lot.
Right.
So from there, you eventually landed at Avtex, which has just recently been acquired by T-Tech.
Mhm.
So uh, why did you make that move and kind of what did you start doing at Avtex? Because that's very different, I think, in right having been at a company where you were focused on just one company and now you're moving to a company that's focused on potentially lots of companies and helping them with their CX.
Well, there's a little bit of a gap in my story I should fill first
Oh, let's
before we
do
get
that.
there. Yep. So I transitioned from helping Best Buy understand the moments that matter across shopping for technology, the role of channels, what are the most important things to learn about by product category, how do they best learn, ratings and reviews, touching and feeling, different things like that. And then they started hiring VPs to build a customer experience practice. Well, at the time, I was reading tons and tons of articles, any article I could get my hands around, having anything to do with customer experience. And so I was busy in the background, chicken scratching out what that would look like, what that process would look like, because at the time, people were talking about customer experience as voice of customer. They were talking about customer experience as data and analytics. They were talking about customer experience as journey mapping. They were talking about customer experience as design thinking. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's not really it, because so many companies are struggling to try to make traction in the customer experience space. And so I ended up reading a lot of articles, and really Forrester, I probably 10 different avenues that they're going down in all these different areas. And I was learning so much about all the things I just mentioned. And I thought to myself, there has to be an order to things. There has to be some sort of process. How do we break down silos? How do we get alignment around a common goal? How do we get the funding that we need? How do we help shoot down ideas that are just really not good ideas? Because in Best Buy's heyday, they had anybody that had an innovative idea, they would throw money to it. And so at Best Buy, I built a customer experience practice, and it was really based on two key things that now I've transitioned into the third when I entered the consulting world, which I'll get to in a minute, but was really like, how do we understand the current state experience of our customers? And then based on the moments that matter and the pain points, how do we build a future state vision and then translate that into our corporate strategy so that the customer becomes the center of that strategy? And then how do we fold in voice of customer across all that we're learning around current state to start to identify those primary areas that we need to solve problems? And at Best Buy, they didn't want to go further than that. They wanted to then take the future state vision, create project charters, and sort of divvy them out across cross-functional teams to start building that vision. When I went into consulting, which I'll go more into later, because now I am coming in and helping businesses, I didn't have that set up. So there's like a third phase now, but it was really doing a lot of trends and market insights, and then doing some deep dives into the customer's experience across some key categories. And that, could be deep dive interviews, ride alongs, shop alongs, anything you can imagine, digital experience stuff. And then getting to that current state journey map. We did opportunity mapping. We did all sorts of different types to work, design thinking to get to those future state ideas, building that future state journey, and then really getting that out to the rest of the organization. And I would say the biggest struggle from a customer experience person is you don't own anything. And that's really important to note. You don't own anything. And you really don't. What you're trying to do is bubble up insights, visualize the experience so that the people that need to make decisions can make really good, educated decisions. And that's really important to note, because you don't own the business as a customer experience expert. You own helping the business understand what that experience looks like today. You own getting the right people in a room to ideate around what those solutions are and what that future state experience needs to be. And so that is sort of where I left it at Best Buy, and I started thinking, I have this very well functioning team of people that are very talented that are now running this day in and day out. And so going into consulting was really intriguing to me because of two things. One, I got to build a customer experience practice from the ground up again. And two, I got to hire and train young talent, which is really a passion of mine. And so that is what kind of drove me into the door at Avtex to be able to do those two things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Something that just struck me that I think a lot of businesses struggle with is when to say no to an idea and to take something that maybe is innovative and maybe is exciting and you go, oh, this could be great. And sometimes you just need to go, you know what, it's not the right time, or it's not there yet, or it doesn't, the business case isn't there, whatever the case may be, and just say, you know what, we're not going to do that right now because it doesn't make sense. And a lot of people want to just go. Let's do it. Let's do this exciting thing.
Yeah, and one of the executives loved getting their 3 foot by 5 foot current state journey maps and future state journey maps. And I would walk by their offices and they would always be standing up in front of them with whoever they were meeting with and having a candid conversation. And that did a couple of things. One, it was very obvious why they're saying no. And it helped the person asking for money realize, yeah, okay, I guess you're right. But two, it helped put the customer at the center. And why do I say that? Because that person that wanted money now knew that they had to actually do some research around the customer, some research, some market research, some other information to really learn about what is actually needed, or to understand that current state map and say, how can I make that experience better? And by coming to that executive with how can I make this experience better based on what we're experiencing today and what we want to get to in the future was what drove then giving away those dollars. And the executives loved it because everything was cross-functional and cross-channel, they had alignment by their direct reports. And so instead of nickeling and diming out this budget, they could give some meaningful money to get some meaningful things done and accomplished.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you're doing today. Obviously you have just gone through a little bit of a merger and you've had a title change, but tell us very quickly kind of about where you started at Avtex and what you're doing today with T-Tech.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So when I started at Avtex back in 2018, and you're right, it is across industries. And at first, industries would say, well, you worked at retail with this process. And I would say, it's a process. It doesn't matter, right? You know the industry, we take the steps, we help you get the learnings you need to make some better decisions. But I started by understanding current state, defining the future state vision, but then building the CX strategy. So helping those companies get from, okay, if this is our vision, how do we understand technology needed to build it? How do we understand like the roadmaps and when we need to do what? How do we have those project charters so we have individual projects that can be accomplished to build out this future state vision? And then how do we start to connect it into voice of customer? So we also build voice of customer programs. We help clients understand based on their current state journey where they should have touch point surveys, what questions they should be asking based on the problems they're seeing, what metrics they should be measuring as sort of an overview, a foundation to start then using someone like Qualtrics to purchase that software. And then we help them build the program. And building the program requires a lot of change management. So you don't build a program, you can't just install technology and expect it to work its magic. right? It's a lot of
You mean,
behavioral
are
changes.
you trying to tell me that I can't just start sending out surveys all the time and I'm good?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
that is
Okay.
correct.
I'll take your word for it
Yes.
because you've been doing this a long time and I know you come at this from a data perspective. So I'm going to take your word for it. And also because I already knew you were right.
Well, also people will ask me, can I do this voice of customer thing for a year? I'm like, yeah, no, right? Well, why can't I just send out surveys? Because it's not about getting the feedback. It's about reviewing the feedback, making sense of the feedback, solving the problems, getting back to your customers and making it right. So it's, and then you're just going to make customers really mad if you keep asking for their feedback and they keep having the same problem. So if you're going to commit to voice of customer, you have to commit.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's less about the number, if you're using something that has a metric and more about the progress that you're making based off the feedback that you're getting. What are you doing with the feedback? That's the important part. The number, is just that. It's a number of where you are current state.
Yep.
The important part is moving forward. So That's great advice.
Well, and a lot of people say, well, I have an 89 for an NPS or OSAT. And it's like, yep. And there's a number called 100, right? And so how do you start improving over time? And a lot of people like to say, well, I want to know how I'm doing against my competitor. Well, that doesn't really matter. It matters how you're doing for your customers. You want to get your customers loyal. It's so much cheaper to keep a current customer than to get a new one, right? And so how do you continue to evolve and make your experience easier? There's a term I ran across back in probably 2018, 2019 called micro moments. And I always think about that because what it entails is that every time you make your customer take an extra step or do something in addition than maybe they want to do, every step is one more chance for them to drop out of your experience. And so I really like effort and thinking about effort because it's easy for employees to get their head around how much effort are we causing. And then it really is a lot easier. Nothing against NPS, right? It's a great metric. It's been around for years. But if you tell an employee you have an NPS of 78 versus you're telling an employee that your effort score is 78 due to this thing, it's easy to get your head around like, oh, if I'm causing effort in this thing, let me step back to the process there and really understand what steps can we take out or what can we automate, right? And so I really like thinking about effort because it really attaches to these micro moments and what are we making our customers do that was probably not necessary.
That is fascinating. I think we could probably spend a whole hour talking even more in depth about that. Maybe we'll do that in the future. But for now,
Yep.
I really want to thank you for you spending time with us today, Kate. I really appreciate your insights. It's been wonderful getting to know you and your journey, and I know that my listeners are going to get a lot of value just listening to some of the things that you've shared today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.